I used to think the greatest pain in life was betrayal, but no. The real pain is being seen by your own parents as a living disappointment, while your little sister is cherished like a precious gem. I'll never forget the time my mother told the neighbor, "Ruby is a bit different. But little Lucy, she's the real pride of our family." Different? Do they even realize how cruel it feels to be treated like a smudge on their perfect painting? They don't. Or worse, they do and just don't care. If you think I'm exaggerating, let me tell you everything from the beginning. My name is Ruby, 33 years old, an American woman living in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm a manager at an independent bookstore in the historic district, a small place filled with old books and the comforting smell of aged wood. I have a master's degree in English literature, and I'm working on the manuscript for my first novel. Sounds decent, right? But to my parents, it's just a life of waiting for something real, a temporary stepping stone, a weird little thing I'm doing before I get back to reality. Meanwhile, Lucy, my sister who's 4 years younger, is the shining star of the Hadley family. Every photo in the house has her at the center, beaming in evening gowns, prestigious degrees, and dozens of trophies. They sent Lucy to a top university in California, covered all her tuition, a private apartment, and a brand new car for convenience. Me, I had to take out student loans, work shifts at the campus cafe, and still remember my dad coldly saying, "If you're choosing to study literature, then you better at least learn to support yourself." I used to think maybe they were just being practical. But the older I got, the more I realized, favoritism isn't accidental. It's intentional. Every decision in the house revolved around Lucy. When I said I wanted to study writing in Vermont, my mom shot it down hard. "How do you plan to make a living? Are you going to keep dreaming forever? Do something practical like Lucy." I stayed silent that time, not because I agreed, but because I knew, arguing with someone who's chosen not to see you only makes it easier for them to look away. The breaking point came when I was 25 and Lucy threw an engagement party at a lakeside mansion in Connecticut. My parents spent over $180,000 to make the event look like it was straight out of a luxury wedding magazine. I was invited as the sister, with no offer of financial help, even though I was drowning in student debt. The only thing I brought was a borrowed dress and a forced smile. When I gave Lucy a leather-bound journal, a personal gift for her to write about her new life, she just gave a dry chuckle. "Oh, classic Ruby. So artsy." Every time I showed up at the house, I felt like an object nobody wanted to display. My mom would sigh when I talked about the book I was writing, as if I were wasting precious time on a pointless game. My dad would just ask, "Have you thought about becoming a teacher? At least there's a pension." I'm not jealous of Lucy, truly I'm not. She's beautiful, charismatic, always knows how to light up a room. What chokes me up is the way the whole family acts like I'm not someone to be proud of. Family dinners are like performances where I always play the side character, or the silent one. "Lucy just got promoted, Ruby," my mom would beam. "And you? Anything new at the bookstore?" That tone, sweet, yet full of condescension, stabbed me like thorns. When Lucy got married, my parents gave her a nearly $2 million house in Boston. It was filled with imported furniture, marble fireplaces, and an English-style rose garden. I stood in the rain on moving day soaked, holding a card I'd scraped together to buy after saving all week. My mom beamed. "See, Lucy finally has a place to start her family, and room for the kids." Me, they never once asked if I wanted a family. To them, I've always been the one living on the sidelines. I've grown used to that feeling. The feeling of being the extra in my own life story. But what they don't know is I'm still writing. Every night, under a dim yellow lamp in my little apartment above the bookstore, I type words no one in my family has ever asked about. I don't write for them. I write so I can still be myself, while the world turns its back. And if you think the story ends here, you're wrong. I never expected everything in my life to change because of a crumpled lottery ticket and a rainy walk to a corner store. It was a gray Thursday morning and I walked into Mr. Harris's shop, the silver-haired man who's run the counter for over 30 years, just to buy a cheap coffee and a small muffin. I had exactly $5 left in my wallet. I saw the blinking sign, Power Win Jackpot, $94 million. And laughed out loud. All I'm missing is a miracle, I muttered, then bought a ticket, using up the last of my cash. Ruby, if you win, buy this old store back, Mr. Harris joked in his raspy voice with a smirk. I'll buy the whole block, I replied dryly, not believing a word I said. 3 days later I had almost forgotten about it, until Mr. Harris called out as I was leaving the store. Ruby, wait, did you check your ticket? I froze. No. I don't even remember where I put it. Your ticket's the winning one. I watched the live draw last night. Every number. I nearly fell off my chair. I stiffened. My canvas bag suddenly felt like it weighed a ton. I searched like a madwoman, my heart pounding, and then I pulled out the wrinkled ticket, still stained with a coffee mark along the edge. I opened my phone and went to the official website. 7, 16, 21, 30, 44, 45, 58. I looked at the ticket, then back at the screen. Once. Twice. My hands shook and I nearly collapsed. Mr. Harris came out from behind the counter and caught me like I was a fainting child. Sit down, Ruby, breathe. You just won $94 million. With Power Play. It's over $97 million. I couldn't say a word. I just stared at him, my mind spinning like I'd been hit over the head. Mr. Harris quietly poured me a glass of water, then placed a hand on my shoulder. Now listen to me. Don't call anyone. Don't say a word. No internet. No Facebook, no Mom, no Lucy. No one. You need to sign the back of that ticket, right now. My hands trembled as I pulled a pen from my bag and scribbled my name, Ruby Hadley, shakily. My hand shook so badly I had to rewrite it 3 times on the back of the ticket. Mr. Harris nodded, his eyes more serious than I'd ever seen. Now give me the ticket, I'll keep it in the store's safe, and, gonna call my daughter, Sharon, a financial attorney. She's good and discreet. You need a team. Immediately. I could only nod. An hour later I sat in a small office behind the grocery store across from Sharon. A woman around 40, hair neatly tied up, wearing a white button-down shirt and dark jeans. Not what I pictured a lawyer would look like. But her eyes were sharp and cold as steel. First thing, Ruby, she said bluntly, we need to set up a trust. Then 2 shell companies. Every asset you buy going forward will be under legal entities, not your name. And most importantly, you cannot appear publicly. If possible, change your phone number and email. You think my family will track you down? Not just your family, old classmates, co-workers, someone who borrowed $3 from you in 2011. Trust me. I swallowed hard. I don't want anyone to know. Sharon looked at me and nodded. Then this is the first step in protecting yourself. In the next 2 weeks, everything moved like a storm. I quietly quit my job at the bookstore, leaving the owner enough money to hire 3 employees for the next 2 years. I moved out of my old apartment, leaving behind my bookshelves and that worn-out armchair I loved, and bought a small house in the suburbs of Providence through the trust. The house had a backyard, a reading room with big windows facing a flaming red maple, and a cozy kitchen. No one knew where I lived, no one knew I had money, and for the first time in many years, I didn't have to ask permission to live the way I wanted. I sat in my new office, a sunlit room with bookshelves from floor to ceiling, looking at the lottery ticket now sealed safely away, and felt my heart heavy and light at the same time. Something was shifting. Not just the numbers in my bank account. The silence of my phone felt strange. No more texts from my mom about mandatory family dinners. No guilt-tripping voicemails from Lucy. No one calling me the writer who refuses to grow up. Just me, blank pages, and an entirely new future. Waiting to be rewritten by my own hand. And then the phone rang. Not Sharon. Not Mr. Harris. It was Lucy. I didn't pick up. I used to think my dream was to write books. But after holding a winning lottery ticket worth $97 million, I realized the real dream wasn't writing. It was giving people the power to write who had never been heard. And I started with the silence my family forced me to live in for so many years. 3 weeks after claiming the prize, I stood inside an old building buried deep in the abandoned warehouse district of East Providence. 4 stories of crumbling red brick, a leaking roof, cracked glass windows. The broker shook his head and said, "This place should just be torn down." I looked through the rusted window frame, saw the late afternoon sun filtering through the dusty glass and hitting the splintered wood floor. Only one thought echoed in my mind. This will be the beginning of every story that's been buried. 3 months later, it became the official headquarters of Silver Ink Press, a publishing company I founded to support writers who had been overlooked for being not mainstream or not marketable. The name Silver Ink was to remind myself, even the dreams that have been scratched and worn can still shine, if we dare to rewrite them in silver ink. I didn't hire people the usual way. My first editor was Jess, a single mom who used to be a school librarian, fired when the district slashed funding. My cover designer was Caleb, a black man who'd been rejected by every big ad agency for having a style unsuitable for the market. Each person came to me carrying a frustration, and I gave them a chance, not out of kindness, but because I knew exactly what the world was missing by turning its back on them. We hosted our first book launch for a small poetry collection by Linda, a 60-year-old former nurse who wrote about grief and healing after losing her husband to cancer. No one wanted to publish her poems, no market, the traditional publishers said. I printed her book on the finest paper with embossed ink, and held a cozy signing event right in the lobby of our newly restored building. Nearly 200 people showed up. Linda cried when she saw her name on the cover. "I thought my life was already over," she whispered. "No," I replied. "It's just beginning." I didn't stop there. I created the Everyone's Writing Corner program, a free writing class initiative for kids, seniors, immigrants, and anyone who never had the chance to learn how to tell their own stories. The third-floor room of Silver Ink Press was transformed into a classroom with chalkboard walls, round tables, and a free library shelf. Each week I set aside one session to teach basic writing to middle school students from low-income public schools. One time, a boy named Marcus, 13, shy, quiet, showed me a comic book draft he had drawn himself. Rough pencil lines, the main character was a gray bear with sad eyes and a tagline, "I don't need to be understood, just heard." I took that draft, gave it to Caleb to redesign, and we released a limited print edition for the program. At the signing event, Marcus froze when he saw his book had a real ISBN number and was placed next to Harry Potter on the shelf. I thought, "This was just a dream," he whispered. "No," I gently squeezed his hand. "You just woke up in a world you wrote yourself into." I didn't tell anyone in my family. I didn't tell Lucy that I was running a socially driven publishing house with dozens of literacy projects in motion. I didn't email my mother or father to let them know I'd invested over $2 million into local cultural development programs. Because I knew they'd only ask, "Does it make a profit?" I don't need them to understand. I'm not doing this for revenge. But I'm also not doing it to earn back validation from people who never believed I had worth. Every book I print, every writer I help, is a silent slap against the label they stamped on me for life. Ruby is just a dreamer. Wrong. I don't just dream. I turn dreams into tools, into weapons, into foundations. And then, on a Monday morning, while Jess and I were sorting through the manuscript of an immigrant author, my phone rang again. "Lucy." 3rd time that week. The message popped up. "I saw your company in the news. Looks nice, but if you're still family, can you help me a little? James lost his job. We're about to lose the house." I locked the screen, set the phone down, and kept reading the manuscript. Written in broken but heartfelt English. By a Mexican woman who had just completed her ESL class. I want to write about my mother. About how she taught me to make soup from whatever was left at the end of the day. I smiled. There was nothing marketable in that sentence, but it was more alive than any financial report Lucy ever bragged about. I looked up at the white wall behind my desk, where a quote from Toni Morrison hung. "If there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it." I'm writing that book, and I have no intention of stopping. I knew that moment would come, I just didn't expect it so soon. Saturday morning I had just brewed coffee, hadn't even sat down to read a manuscript when the doorbell rang, fast and urgent, like the house was on fire. I looked at the security camera screen. It was them. Lucy stood at the door, cream-colored dress, hair curled perfectly, like she'd just stepped out of a magazine shoot. My mother was fussing with my father's collar, while my father, wearing sunglasses, tried unsuccessfully to hide how uncomfortable he looked. They stood there, all three of them, as if this were a friendly visit, not the first time they'd come looking for me after years of only referring to me as the stubborn one. I opened the door. "Hi, Ruby," my mother said first, voice stiff. "How have you been?" "I'm fine, come in," I replied, stepping aside. No expression. No hug. They walked into the living room as if entering a strange new world. My father looked up at the high ceiling and crystal chandelier. Lucy glanced around the room filled with books and natural light from the large glass windows. "Oh," Lucy said. "Did you decorate all this yourself?" "I hired an interior designer, but I picked every book on the shelves myself." She gave a weak laugh. It's nice." My mother sat down on the gray velvet chair, placing her leather handbag on her lap. She looked at me, her eyes a mix of curiosity and caution. "Ruby, we need to talk." I sat across from them, hands on the oak table, calm to the point of cold. "I'm guessing this has to do with the lottery?" My father cleared his throat. "News spreads fast. The article in the Providence Times, your name was on the front page." "Oh, so now you read the local paper?" I tilted my head, half smiling. Back then, when I had a tiny feature, no one in this family even noticed. Lucy cut in, her voice sickeningly sweet. "We didn't come here to rehash the past, Ruby. Honestly, we're happy for you. Really." "Are you?" I leaned forward, pulled 3 thick white envelopes from the drawer under the table, and placed them on the surface one by one deliberately. "Good. Because I've prepared a very honest gift for each of you." They looked at the envelopes like they might explode at any moment. "Lucy." I slid one envelope toward her. "Inside is a check for $15,000, the amount you borrowed from me back in 2016 to start your online cosmetics store. You said you'd pay me back, but then conveniently forgot." Lucy blushed. "Ruby, that was a long time ago." "Exactly. And I'm not waiting one more day." I pushed the second envelope forward. "This one's for Mom and Dad. $22,500. It covers every expense you ever spent on me from childhood. I have a notebook detailing each item: birthdays, elementary school tuition, first bicycle. I even factored in inflation and bank interest." My mother's hands trembled as she opened the envelope and saw the check printed with the name of a financial firm. She didn't say a word. Just sat there in stunned silence. The last envelope I kept for myself. I looked up at them. "This one contains the business plan, company documents for Silver Ink Press, and all the community initiatives I've been running. Nothing in here required the family's approval. I did it alone. No borrowing, no favors." "Ruby," my father finally spoke, his voice lower now. "You're misunderstanding. We're family. We don't keep score like this." "No keeping score?" I let out a laugh, but there was no joy in it. "So when you spent hundreds of thousands on Lucy's wedding without even asking if I could afford lunch, that wasn't keeping score? When you refused to co-sign my student loan but bought Lucy a brand new car, that wasn't keeping score either?" "We were concerned about you," my mother whispered. "Because you always chose such a different path." No, you were concerned because I wasn't Lucy, and now that I have money, suddenly I matter again. Don't act like it's anything else. The room fell silent. I stood up and opened the door. I don't need any of the three of you. But I know exactly who needs who now. Lucy clutched her handbag tightly, her voice sharp. You think you're better than us, just because you got lucky. I didn't respond. I just looked her straight in the eyes. And finally, Lucy looked down. My mother slowly stood up, tears beginning to fall. Ruby, you may not forgive us, but don't push us away like this. I know I was wrong. I shook my head slightly. You weren't wrong for playing favorites. You were wrong for never seeing who I was. And now that I don't live to please anyone anymore, suddenly you see me. I didn't close the door right away when they left. I stood there, watching the three of them disappear behind the row of purple lavender bushes. For the first time in my life, I felt at peace. Not angry, not bitter, just free. I used to think that once I made my stand, they'd disappear from my life. But no, family doesn't know how to walk away when they need money. 3 months after that final visit, the messages started coming. At first, they were polite, regular, like a quiet knock in the middle of the night. Ruby, I hope you're well. Your father's been a little under the weather. Please call when you can. Hey sis, I just read the article about Silver Ink, so proud of you, hope to hear from you soon. I didn't reply. I didn't delete them either, I just read. And stayed silent. Then the tone changed, the fake softness disappeared, replaced by raw desperation. Ruby, I'm begging you, your father's company is being sued for fraudulent bankruptcy, we're about to lose the house. Sis, I have nowhere to go. James made a bad investment, the bank froze our accounts. Please help me, okay? There was a time I craved hearing the word sorry. But now, even when they were asking, they couldn't bother to include the word apology. They asked for money, for forgiveness, for a place back in my life, but never for forgiveness. For treating me like garbage beneath Lucy's feet. I kept working. Silver Ink Press was expanding. We had just signed 3 young authors from the South Boston projects and were preparing to publish their short story collection. The editorial department was running at full speed, dozens of manuscripts arrived each week. I lived in books, in honest voices and the hunger to be heard by people the world had ignored. But they still wouldn't disappear. One Friday afternoon, I had just left the office and was driving home when I saw Lucy standing at my gate. Her silk dress was wrinkled, her hair a tangled mess. She didn't look like the Lucy I once knew. The always polished, always perfect Lucy, who used to mock me for dressing like an old maid. I got out of the car, locked the door, and didn't rush over. She stepped closer, eyes red and swollen. I don't have anywhere else to go. I crossed my arms and stood still. Do you remember the last thing you said to me, Lucy? You said, I thought I was better than everyone because I won the lottery. Do you remember that? I was angry. I was hurt. No, you were ashamed because I succeeded without needing help from anyone. You were afraid to face the truth. That even though Mom and Dad poured every resource into you, you still couldn't build anything that lasted. Lucy broke down in tears. You're right, James. He invested in crypto. Over $500,000, gone. The house was seized, the car towed. I'm staying with a friend, but they're moving soon too. I'm not asking for money. I'm just asking for a chance. I looked at my sister. The one who took all the praise, all the expectations, all the validation from our parents and never once felt guilty. Now, stripped down, shattered, nothing left but bare hands and a crushed pride. I opened the gate. Come in. But only for 10 minutes. We sat on the porch, where I usually read in the mornings. Lucy held the hot cup of tea I made, her hands trembling. Have you called Mom? I asked. I did. She's got nothing left either. Dad's company is under investigation, their credit cards are frozen. They've hired a private lawyer to try and avoid personal liability, but it's not looking good. And now suddenly they all remember me." Lucy said nothing, then whispered, "They think you'll forgive. Like, you always used to." I sighed, staring into the distance. "Back then I needed them. Now I don't." "You're still a good person, right?" "Ah?" Lucy looked at me, eyes wide, like a lost child. "You're not going to let your family fall apart, are you?" I set my cup of tea down. "You're right. I am a good person. But being good doesn't mean turning myself into a wallet for other people to drain. Being good never earned me their respect. They looked down on me for it." She choked up. "So, you're not going to help?" I stood up. "I will help, just not the way they expect." I pulled 3 file folders from my bag and laid them on the table. "1 is an assistant manager position at the local arts center. You volunteered there back in college. 2 is an event coordinator role at a nonprofit that Silver Ink is sponsoring. 3 is the free writing class I run. You can help students with storytelling." Lucy looked at the folders like I'd handed her a pile of bricks. "You want me to actually work? From the ground up, just like I did. What about money?" "There's no money, just work. And a choice." She shot up, eyes flashing with anger. "You're getting revenge." "No. I'm giving you what Mom and Dad never gave me. A real start." Lucy didn't say anything else. She picked up the folders and quietly walked out the gate, like someone wandering through the ruins of a dream. I stayed there, gripping my now cold teacup. I knew the storm wasn't over. Because my mother and father, they wouldn't let things end so quietly. That evening, the sky over Providence turned amber, and the warm lights glowed across the glass panes of the 3-story building where Silver Ink Press had officially launched. We had transformed the old warehouse into a vibrant space. Bookshelves from floor to ceiling, illustrations by authors hanging on every wall, and a small stage in the corner for live readings. I stood in the center of the grand hall, in a simple black dress, holding a glass of white wine, watching everyone, authors, readers, journalists, and students from our community programs, smiling, talking, and living in a world where words held more weight than status or money. It was my night, and, like a curse that never misses its cue, they came. I saw them the moment they stepped through the revolving glass door, my mother in a pale blue evening gown, face carefully made up but still worn with exhaustion, my father behind her, suit wrinkled, heels of his shoes scuffed. And Lucy, still beautiful, but this time without the pride in her eyes. They moved through the crowd without greeting anyone, without looking around, heading straight for me. I wasn't surprised. "Ruby," my mother spoke first, her smile trembling. You really did it." "Without anyone's help," I replied, taking a sip of wine, my eyes locked on hers. My father looked around, his voice low. "We need to talk. Urgently." I nodded and pointed toward the small meeting room at the end of the hallway, the one with soundproof walls and frosted glass doors. "In there." We sat across from each other. I didn't offer them water. There was no need for niceties on a battlefield. Lucy spoke first, her voice hoarse. "We're about to lose everything. James left. The bank sent the foreclosure notice on the house." My mother jumped in. "Your father's company. It's officially bankrupt. No savings left, no shares. No insurance? Nothing at all." I crossed my arms, eyes landing on my father. "And now you thought of me?" He nodded without lifting his head. "We're family, Ruby." I stood up and opened a file case I had prepared in advance, pulling out 3 folders and placing them on the table like turning over cards of fate. "No money, but there are options." They stared at me, unblinking. I slid the first folder toward my mother. "Mom, the community nursing home on the south side is hiring an activities manager. They're looking for someone with communication skills who can plan events for the elderly. Your profile fits. They agreed to an interview next week. My mother's eyes widened. You mean, go back to work? No, I mean start over. I turned to my father and handed him the second folder. A nonprofit startup, focused on community education, is looking for a part-time financial advisor. The pay isn't high, but they need someone with experience. He gripped the folder tightly. You do know I used to manage millions of dollars, right? And lost it all too, I replied coldly. This is a chance to rebuild. No power, no title, just work, and learning to build something from scratch. Finally, I pushed the last folder toward Lucy. There's an event coordinator position at the Community Arts Center. They know you worked in wedding planning. This is a first step. Real work. Not high-paying, but stable. Lucy looked at me, tears in her eyes. Do you really believe I can do it? You can, but this time, no one's clearing the path for you. You walk it yourself. My mother started crying. Ruby, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. We should have supported you, not forced you to be like Lucy, but now you're the only one who hasn't turned your back on this family. I stood up, resting a hand on the back of my chair. I haven't turned my back. But I'm not opening my wallet either. From now on, you'll have to stand on your own feet, just like I did. My father cleared his throat. And if we refuse? Then I wish you the best of luck, but I'm not a bailout fund. No one said another word. Only the faint hum of the air conditioner and the distant sound of jazz music from the lobby filled the silence. Finally, Lucy gave a small nod. I'll try. I looked at my sister. For the first time in years I saw sincerity in her eyes. My father picked up the folder and exhaled like he'd just set down a heavy weight. And my mother, still not raising her head, held my hand tightly as she walked out of the room. Once they were gone, I returned to the main hall. Jess came up beside me, her eyes full of concern. You okay? I nodded, better than ever. The program continued. Our youngest author, little Eliza, age 12, was signing her very first comic book. She spotted me and ran over, eyes shining. Miss Ruby, they're lining up for my autograph. I knelt down, smoothing her hair. You deserve it. No titles, no inherited legacy. I built all of this from doubt and rejection. And tonight, as the ones who once turned their backs on me took their first steps into the real world, I knew I had won. That morning, I was watering the lavender pots on the porch, lavenders I brought back from the community garden in South Providence, when my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. The screen lit up with a name that made me pause for a second. Lucy. The message was just one line, simple but holding far more weight than any of the hollow excuses I'd ever received from her. Hey, I have my first interview at the Arts Center tomorrow. Any advice? I sat down on the long porch bench, phone still in hand. I read the message again. No exclamation mark, no emoji, no attempt to soften the words with fake humor. Just an honest question. I closed my eyes for a few seconds. A flash of Lucy in her $10,000 wedding gown appeared in my mind, standing in the middle of that glittering celebration, with candles, crystals, and violins. Back then, I stood on the sidelines, forcing a smile. A faded shadow, always used as the comparison. And now, that same Lucy, the one who once mocked my dreams, was asking for advice on a real job. Not advice about which wedding gown photographs best, not about perfume brands, or how to impress at soulless charity galas. I texted back. Be yourself, but the real you, not the version everyone else expects. A minute later, Lucy replied with a heart emoji. That was it. No overthinking, no extra words, and for the first time, I saw someone changing in that message. I put my phone down, stood up, and resumed watering the plants. The scent of damp soil rose, blending with the lavender's sweetness. A gentle breeze rustled the curtain behind me. Inside the house, my debut novel manuscript sat on my writing desk, ready for one last edit before printing. The book I wrote on lonely nights, in that damp upstairs room above the old bookstore. I wrote it out of pain, from dreams that were trampled, and a small hope that one day, I would no longer be the shadow behind Lucy. Now, I wasn't behind anyone, I stood exactly where I belonged. At the front. That afternoon I headed to Silver Ink Press for the signing ceremony of 4 young authors from our community writing program. 3 of them were immigrants. The 4th was a veteran who had once been homeless. Each one held their manuscript like it was their dream in physical form. As they signed their first ever publishing contracts, I realized, this is what truly matters. Not the money in the bank, not the flattering press, but real change. From people who once believed they had no voice. That evening, I sat in my usual reading corner in the backyard. The moon rose slowly, its gentle light shining over the freshly trimmed lawn. Beside me was a handwritten letter from a 14-year-old boy in our free downtown writing class. Miss Ruby, if it weren't for your class, I don't think I'd ever have dared to write about my mom. You made me believe that kids like me have something worth saying. I held the letter, folded it carefully, and placed it in the keepsake box of life's most precious moments. In that box there was nothing luxurious. Just letters like his, a few scribbled drawings from kids, my first manuscript draft, and one faded lottery ticket, still bearing my signature on the back. I smiled. Not because I won the lottery, but because I didn't let the money define me. I used it like a pen, to rewrite my life, and to help others begin their own stories. My phone rang again, this time it was from Mom. I didn't rush to answer. I let it ring through, then opened the message. Ruby, I just wanted to say, you looked radiant today. And I'm sorry for never believing you could be like this. I read slowly. One word, then another. I'm sorry. For the first time, it wasn't about needing money, or because of failure, or fear, or collapsed pride. It was a genuine apology. I didn't reply, not because I hadn't forgiven her, but because I was busy living, fully, freely. As I closed my notebook and looked up at the moon, I knew. My victory was never about wealth. My victory was this: I no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. And I, Ruby Hadley, had become the woman I once dreamed of being. From those old pages, full of handwritten words and tears. My story isn't about winning the lottery. It's about finding myself again, through the rejection and judgment of my own family. From someone once overlooked, I rebuilt my life with my own hands and unwavering heart. True wealth isn't in a number. It's in living authentically, empowering others, and no longer needing validation from those who once denied me. That's the greatest victory. Peace, freedom, and real worth. What do you think about Ruby's journey and the choices she made with her family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, heartfelt stories about family and life.